Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today I'll be doing a review of the brand new film Uncharted, starring Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg, and also talking a little bit about its box office projections for the weekend. So a bit of a movie review and box office projection update video for the film Uncharted. Before going any further into my own thoughts about the film, please make sure that you smash that like button, loud that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So I do want to preface this by saying that I am not a gamer by the typical sense. You know, I've played games before. I do like some of the generic games on the Switch, things like Mario Kart, Mario Party, stuff like that. But when it comes to games, I am very much a noob. I'm very much unlearned when it comes to major franchises, things like that. So when it comes to the Uncharted franchise, I really don't know that much about it. I just know that Nathan Fillion at one point had done it was like a fan-made film, and a lot of people wanted to see Nathan Fillion as Nathan Drake, and a lot of people had questions and doubts about Tom Holland being able to really fulfill what that character was in the games and really be able to actually be Nathan Drake, that they didn't see the character of Nathan Drake in him. So I can't really speak to that as not really having any knowledge of the games themselves. What I can speak to is the film as a film, and Tom Holland as a performer in said film. And when it comes to Tom Holland, because I think that's going to be probably one of the biggest discussion points about this movie, I do feel that even though I don't have any knowledge or any real connection to the Uncharted video game franchise, what I can say is that Tom Holland, I fear, has kind of fallen into this trap of now every single role he does, or at least this is just based off of, at least in this specific film, it just seems like he's Peter Parker. It just seems like he's Peter Parker, only now he's just doing non-Spider-Man things. And that, I think, is something that Tom Holland probably is going to want to try and take care of. Honestly, I think the best way that he could do that, again, not that he would take my advice, would actually be to kind of move out of the big, major, high-budget film franchises and instead try and do some of the lower-budget indie films, really try and build up his, his acting prowess and ability by working with really talented directors who make more lower budget films, like non-franchise films, because then that will allow him, I think, to expand as an actor. That's just, again, if he wants to do that. But when it comes to this film and his performance, it's not that he's not fitting the character of Nathan Drake. It's just that he is coming across as Tom Holland and the Spider-Man persona. I mean, there were several points in this film, especially there's the one sequence that you see in the trailer, I believe, and you see it in some of the first glimpses of the film, where he is, outside the plane. He's, hopping from these different cargo holds to it, like these different cargo shipment containers, basically from one to the other. And I was just like, oh, all he's missing is the web and the suit, and this is Spider-Man. He's cracking jokes, right, in a very similar fashion. He uses the same tone, actually, in his jokes, where it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Like, it's just, again, it comes across as just Tom Holland playing Peter Parker, and maybe that's just Tom Holland just playing Tom Holland. Again, I haven't really seen him much in anything else outside of Spider-Man to really be able to have much to compare it with, but all I could say is in this one, it just comes across as him playing that character just a bit. Mark Wahlberg is in the film as well, and I think that he plays a character that's fine. He's, again, kind of Mark Wahlberg in the film. It's kind of a story of actors just basically being and portraying themselves. And so I would say that the acting overall, it's not great. It's not terrible. Overall, it's just there. I mean, all of the performers, I think, do exactly what they kind of need to do in this type of action adventure film. I mean, that's really what it is. It's just a typical action adventure film. There's nothing really special or unique about it. It is not something that is going to change the dynamic of the industry. It's not something that's going to kind of leave a mark as being a unique entry into the action adventure film. It does a lot of the same things that have already been done in these types of films before. And so I think because of that, yeah, it might do fine at the box office, right? There's some early indications that it's going to get up to $70 million in its global release. But the issue, of course, with that bit of news is that the film, because of its budget and because of how much studios actually get, and because of, all the different factors, the film needs to make around $300 million worldwide to break even. So a $70 million global opening, though that sounds really good on paper, is still kind of far off where this film really needs to be if it's going to get to that point. Now, it did get confirmed that Uncharted got a China release, which is, of course, quite upsetting, as this is a Sony release, and they were looking so good in not having Spider-Man No Way Home get released there, and unfortunately, it looks like they, just like any of the other major studios, are continuing to work with the Chinese Communist Party and are guaranteeing that the Chinese Communist Party will get millions upon millions of dollars from this release in China. So this could very well could give this film the extra bit of boost it might need to get to a break-even point. But as I said, it needs to make $300 million worldwide. And as I've pointed out, when you look at Box Office Pro, their projections domestically for this film only have it getting a little under $100 million domestically by the end of its run, right? Not even hitting $100 million domestically. So if that number holds, if that number is able to remain consistent and it's not able to get there, that means it needs to make 200 plus million in the overseas markets in order for it to hit that break-even point, which, yes, that's theoretically possible, but it is not something that has been very common amongst some of the bigger budget releases that have happened over the last couple of years. Probably a lot to do with the fact that, you're dealing with a lot of countries that have a lot of crazy lockdown measures, etc., but also because of the state of Hollywood, right? Some people have said, oh, he's being, Odin's a hypocrite because he has said, constantly, like, you can't use the pandemic as an excuse while at the same time saying X. It's like, no, both things can be true at once, right? I think that you can absolutely point to the fact that the pandemic has had an impact on movie-going habits because there were draconian lockdown measures, right? There have been various draconian lockdown measures done, across the world, and that has absolutely impacted the movie-going habits of people in the general sense, while at the same time, when you do look at films like Venom 2 or films like Spider-Man No Way Home, it does show people are still more than willing to go out in droves to go support films, especially in the case of Spider-Man No Way Home, in order to not only get that film to make profit, like in the case of Venom 2, but even to break records, like in the case of Spider-Man No Way Home, as Venom 2 was not able to be the original release of Venom, but was still able to make more than enough to make some pretty hefty profits on top of its pretty reasonably sized budget. And so what this is all showing, though, is that this is a film that could still potentially get to that point. But I will say, based on just my own current thoughts about the film, I don't know if this is going to have really anything special about it that's going to be able to really drive people out to go and see it, because I think that video game fans are going to be incredibly disappointed because, based on just things that I'm hearing, there already are a lot of people who are complaining that this really is not Nathan Drake. This is really not the fulfillment, and they kind of already knew that going in based on the trailers and based just on Tom Holland and the persona that he always puts on in his films, especially the persona that he continues in this one of really kind of the Peter Parker persona. That is not really what Nathan Drake is, according to, again, people who have played the game, who know a lot more and a lot better than I do. And so I think that is going to have an impact on this, because you're not going to get really the video game crowd going out to see it. As far as general moviegoers are concerned, I think that Tom Holland is going to bring some people out. But really, we've come to realize, especially the last several years, that as far as the stars and the power of stars to bring people out to theaters are concerned, really there isn't a whole lot of there anymore, right? Stars don't really bring people out to the theater anymore. It's the entire package, right? It's the star in a specific type of movie. It is the actual story. It is the marketing behind it, right? All of these other things that are going about it. And so this is not the same situation as Spider-Man No Way Home, where in No Way Home, you had a film that had a lot of different elements coming together, a lot of anticipation around it, kind of the culmination of a lot of things, fans getting exactly what they wanted. Where in this case, I don't think necessarily, based on what we're seeing and what we're hearing, that you're really getting the same thing, right? You're not getting Uncharted fans getting the Uncharted film that they had always had wanted. I think that general movie fans who know nothing about the franchise will go into this film and have a good time with it. That was just my own personal experience with it. So, despite my issues with the Tom Holland performance being very similar to Spider-Man, overall, I enjoyed the film. I did not think it was the best film as far as the writing is concerned. Again, there's nothing new, there's nothing original here. There are some of the same tropes. There are some ideas. There's some head-scratching moments where you think to yourself, wait a minute, this twist doesn't make any sense, and wait a minute, why are they doing this? Why is this character doing X or Y? Shout out and kudos, though, to the stunt team on this film, because even though there are some not so great CGI moments in the film, luckily they do not rely on as much CGI, especially during stunts, as some other films have done in the past. And so kudos to the stunt team for doing some pretty cool looking stunts. And if Tom Holland was able to do some of those stunts, again, shout out to him in that process as well. But the story, again, is really not all that intriguing, is not all that, again, mind-boggling or rather mind-blowing by any means. It's just there. It's just kind of a film that exists. It's a film that I think most people will probably forget. It's a film that I think most people will probably not rewatch in the future, and will just go to the theater, watch it, say, hey, I had a good time with it. I had fun. I enjoyed spending my time, and I think that that's going to be the general sentiment of most people going to see this movie. And so if I had to give this film a grade, I gave it a B- in my instant review on Instagram last night, and I would probably say I would stick to that. I think a B- is actually very fair to this film, because it's not a terrible film. The writing, again, is not great. The acting is fine, but it's a film that has all of the elements of a generic action-adventure film that's going to keep the vast majority of people entertained. And so because of that, and because of my own subjective entertainment and enjoyment of the story, because, again, I tend to like the adventure type movies. I tend to like, when they're on treasure hunts, when there's all these connections, right? It has some National Treasure moments, I think, in this. So if you like the National Treasure movies with Nicolas Cage, despite that franchise, of course, having Nicolas Cage, if you like just having the different perspective of this character, or rather of this universe of, looking for treasure and looking for connections and finding keys and finding the keyholes and things like that, I think you'll like it. I also will say that I had a bias because there was definitely a lot of Catholic imagery in this movie, right? There was a lot of use of Catholic churches and stuff like that. There were a couple of lines that I was not too fond of. Like there was one line about, oh, it's all this giant family, and, whether it's the Crusades or the Inquisition, anything bad in history they have been connected to. And I'm just thinking to myself, okay, that's not a very nuanced discussion about those things. But again, I think that it's interesting that there are a lot of Catholic elements as far as mentions in this film, and a lot of use of churches, and really beautiful churches at that. Interesting about Mark Wahlberg, again, obviously he being a practicing Catholic, him being in, I guess, I don't know if they were in actual churches or if they were just in models of churches, but there are certain lines that are said where I was like, I don't know about that, because you're saying a curse word inside of a church. Didn't really rub me the right way in that instance. But anyway, overall, I would say it's a generic action film. Nothing too special about it. I think that a lot of people are gonna, have fun with it as far as it being just a general film and concern. The ending does have, I think there's about two post-credit scenes. Nothing is right after the end credits, but there are some extra credit scenes that happen after the final title card of Uncharted comes up on screen, which does set up for other films in the future. Whether or not it does get any other releases is going to depend, I think, on whether or not this film's able to make any money. But I think that most people are going to, find this film entertaining and are going to be able to kind of have some mindless enjoyment behind it. And I know that is not going to be what everyone wants, right? We want smarter entertainment. We want films that are actually going to, challenge us, to make us think. We want films that are going to allow us to escape. And I think that there are some elements of this film that are definitely going to allow for some just generic, mindless escapism. And again, sometimes that's what we need, right? Sometimes we need mindless escapism. And in this specific case, not only, again, does it fall into the same objective traps that a lot of the other films that I've roasted in the past have done, but in this case, subjectively, I found some enjoyment in it. I think just because of the material being used and the aspect of treasure hunting and stuff like that. Again, typically, if it's done marginally well, I enjoyed, and this one I think did just fine. Anyway, what are y'all's thoughts about Uncharted? Have you seen the film? Obviously, I know there's gonna be a lot of video game fans. They're gonna say this is not Nathan Drake, etc. Hey, you are entitled to hate the film, to criticize the film for that reason. Again, I'm all about respecting source material, and if this film does not respect the source material, hey, I think that you have every right to bring those points up. But I think that as an outsider to this, I think that, and anyone else who might be an outsider to this, if you're just looking for a generic action film to go in and shut your mind off and just jump into this world and universe, and you don't mind Tom Holland being Tom Holland, I think that overall you'll find some enjoyment here. But yeah, what are y'all's thoughts about it? Have you seen it? Let me know in the comment section down below. Also, do you think that this film is going to be able to get to the $300 million it needs to make worldwide to break even during the course of its run? Again, $70+ million opening weekend here. In addition to the money it's already made, we'll go ahead and see what those numbers look like in our box office breakdown later in the weekend. But also, do you think the China release is going to help that film at all? And also, just to mention it, because again, it is something that was also confirmed really early in the morning the other day. It says the Batman as well has also confirmed a China release deal, which doesn't make a whole lot, or rather is not much of a surprise, because yeah, Warner Brothers has been working with the CCP very well during the pandemic times, and giving, again, millions upon millions of dollars to the communists there for their violations of human rights. Anyway, what are y'all's thoughts? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, not that fire button if you're watching on Odyssey. You are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my Patreon Subscribestar and Locals members, starting off with Patreon animation commentator Brandon, let's go Brandon, Brian P, Christopher Bowman, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father. Father Damian Cook, Fuzz Aldrin, Garrett Searles, Hannibal Grimm, Harold Francis, Hymir Ari Hymason, Inflamed Wood, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Gomer Kyles 79, Laura, The Modern Major General's Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Owen, Stan Andrian, Teresa Martin, or Miss Martin Muses, Theodore Benden, Tina Bojan, and Tina B, the Empress of the Universe. Thank you very much for supporting me over on Patreon. Also to my Subscribestar peeps, UAB Mad Dog, which is Mr. Mike Jackson, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, Stand For, John B, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man. Thank you all very much for supporting me over on the Subscribestar platform. And to my 3 local supporters, we got Kara Tharp, UAB Mad Dog, which is once again Mike Jackson, super supporter over there, and Robert Barnes. Thank you very much for supporting me over on the Locals platform. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, please think about signing up on either of those platforms. You can find a link in the description below that will lead you to all of those different pages. It is known as the Willow link, as it is w.lo link, and it will have all of the links to that, to the Discord channel, to all different kinds of places, including places to support me as well. At the Citizen of Asgardian level, you get Citizen of Asgardian level is how it's labeled on Patreon. Still need to fix that, but Citizen of Asgard level, you get a shout out at the end of every live stream and video. If you join at the Army of Asgard level, you also access to a giveaways channel, which is featured on the Discord that I have. I know, River, it is very exciting. It is so exciting, where you get giveaways for things like 4K titles, Steelbook titles, etc. Again, I got some 4K Steelbooks of The Punisher, for instance. I've got 4Ks of tons of other movies, so I'm giving those away all the time. So if that sounds interesting to you, join the Army of Asgard level. Also, at the Keep of the Bifrost level, you get all of that stuff, plus you get access to a once a month and maybe twice a month. We're trying to add an extra podcast in there of me and John the Flick Pick Flickinger, where we talk about movies, and also you get to ask your questions. Any questions that you want to ask, you get to ask with that podcast. And then you have the Chosen of Valhalla level, which gives you access to all of those, and also a once a month podcast where you get to be featured with me on the main channel. We all get to talk together about movies, culture, pop culture, anything really that the Chosen want to talk about, or anything the Chosen want to promote is on the table. So if you like that, join at the Chosen of Valhalla level. Also, during your first month of support, you get a free t-shirt. Any t-shirt that you want from the main store, you get access to, and I do ship internationally anywhere in the world. Anyway, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.